Welcome to True Black, where we give our true Black opinions, true Black thoughts, and true Black perspective. Now, today we're doing a commentary on a video by Jubilee of Black conservatives versus white liberals. And although this seems like a really good one, I already know that I expect half truths to be on both sides. So we're gonna go through and figure out what those half truths are and where they're all failing to realize whatever points that really affect Black people, because we're going to be talking about stuff that has to do with Black or minorities in general. But all right, let's get it started.
This is the 112th episode of Middle Ground, and we want you to help us decide what the next 112 episodes will be. Join our Middle Ground Patreon community and make Middle.
White Americans have way more advantages than Black Americans.
Already off rip, my bad, I skipped. But already off rip, white Americans have more advantages than Black Americans. Yes. But it's not even about having way more advantages. It's just about not having as many disadvantages. The thing is, I saw a research where they said that black men with a college degree and without a criminal record are almost similarly likely to get a callback as a white criminal with no degree, or a white criminal, or a white criminal with a degree, or something like that. And the thing is that like they don't have to struggle as hard as we do because they are always given the benefit of the doubt. And that right there is kind of like the biggest thing that they get to have over us, is that they're always given the benefit of the doubt, while we're always automatically seen as like a villain, or we're always seen as being a threat.
I think I'm a rarity here.
It would seem so.
Do white Americans have more advantages because they're white, or do just white Americans have advantages because of historic factors? I think that people want to argue at the end of the day
Historic
over whether it's because you're white or
factors
not.
that
I think that the
rolled
answer
over.
is because you're white in the past, and that's how it kind of carries over to today. You know, even in times of the United States history where Black people have tried to build wealth, you know, with the Tulsa riots and everything, where that this wealth has been destroyed. And something that's upsetting to me is when conservatives talk about how we can't blame the past for what's happening in the present. That is true to some extent, but then the next breath they'll talk about how important it is to have dual parent households, how important it is to have a strong family, to have responsibility passed on from parent to child. And we've seen in the past that because of racial issues, that process has been severely disrupted.
The funny thing is that agreeing with all these things is when I did my research when I was younger, which arrived me to my standpoint of being a conservative, because I believed it was racist, Democrat, liberal ideologies and policies dating all the way back to the 1800s, all the way up to the 1960s, and then the purported big switch. But I think it was more so when Democrats decided to be a bit more cloak and dagger about their true opinions of Black people and be more.
Okay, so with this, like, he's not necessarily wrong about all the stuff that Democrats have been doing. However, Republicans are no better. And that's where I often see like Black conservatives falling into the trap of Black conservatism, or just conservatism in general, because they think that, oh, once they see the cloak and dagger that the Democrats really are, when they see them as being more so closet racist, they're like, oh, well, they're the real racists. And then the conservatives will point out like, yeah, they're the ones who are really against you. Those are the ones who are really hurting you. So therefore you should join with us because we don't do that. And it's like Reagan and the, war on drugs that they put in the community so that they can have this dude overthrow a government over, I forgot where it was, in a middle American country, so that the government could have someone in that country as like a puppet politician. I forgot. Oliver North did he did a research on that, exposing how the government was allowing drugs to go in, causing gang violence and all these other things, so that our community would end up eventually becoming destroyed. But they at least get to let these drug lords make the money so they can fund these guerrilla groups to overthrow these Central American governments. I forgot if it was Colombia or something. I forgot where it was, but that's why they did that. And it's like they'll point at And they'll point the finger at the Democrats. It's like, oh, well, back in the day, the Democrats were the ones who were hanging your people and doing all this stuff. And it's like, bro, you act like people don't go to, bed with the people of different political origin or different political standpoints. They all go to the same place away from us. And they all, whether they do it or don't, they're related to it in some way. So it's like, it's not like you can just be like a conservative and point the finger at a liberal, like, oh, that was them. It's like, no, you got to own up for what you did on your side as well.
Secretive and more, we want to help you by, doing these things and seeing them as
Doing
inferior.
what things?
Affirmative action, welfare, all sorts of things that eventually ruin our culture and place us where we are now.
So
but I want to get back to the history of it, because we're talking about...
Well, I just want to make sure we're clear. Giving them money hurt them, right? Is that what you're saying?
All right, both of these dudes is giving kind of like half-truths or whatnot. Because it's like, Alec is saying that like, oh, it's bad to give people money. And it's like, Chandler is probably going to go into, because from what he already said, it's like, oh, that stuff destroyed our families. And it's like, both of, yeah, them giving us the money with certain strings attached is what helped to create one of the most destitute, versions of our community. It helped to destroy it. But it's like, it's not like, oh, just giving money just to give money. It's like, no, if they never moved the jobs overseas and like black people still was able to work in these factory jobs and like do what we were doing before, we would be all right. And we wouldn't even need the handouts. But it's like, not only that, but it's like, if we're really talking handouts, like that wasn't really a handout, bro. With all the strings that came attached with it, it's like, bro, it was almost like kind of not even worth it.
Well, yes, giving them, because if your father's out of the home, that's when we give you the money. If you're living in this housing,
so then give them the money while the dad's
rent-free,
well, then give them the money while the dad's in the home.
If you're working this amount of hours and getting less than this amount of dollars, you're getting money from the government. Yes, it is incentivizing.
You're throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
I don't even know what that means in this scenario, because yes,
you want to
talk about throwing babies out with the bathwater? Margaret Sanger wanted to exterminate the black race.
I don't know why
he
jumped on.
So yeah, we can literally talk about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. That's what Margaret Sanger, that's what Democrat policies wanted to do to my people. So that's why I feel so strongly about it, because it is these policies that date back centuries that were built off of the death and poverty of my people.
Let's take a breath.
Sure. I'm breathing.
Okay.
So a lot of babies aren't, but I am, sadly.
Bruh.
I don't know what that means. When I say throw the baby out with the bathwater, you want to completely get rid of welfare, okay? Or at least the I don't want to put that on you haven't said that, but the conservative apparatus does, clearly. So giving money to a group of people does not hurt them.
I mean, sure, if you're talking about a lottery, just take money. But
yes.
there are strings attached to that money.
Take all the money.
There are strings attached
Give
to that
them
money.
millions. Make them all millionaires. I don't care. Giving money to black people does not hurt them.
And
Giving money to black people with strings attached does. Like, he's talking as if like welfare is almost reparations, and it's like, it's not. Don't conflate the two. You cannot conflate those two, because like reparations for what we've been through in this country are like a totally different thing. Reparations has to be paid for slavery, for Jim Crow, for segregation, for separate but equal, even though all three of those pretty much wrapped into one. The school to prison pipeline, the war on drugs, and the fact that they put the drugs in our community, redlining, police brutality. Like, reparations is not just for slavery, bro. Reparations is for a whole quantity of things. And it's like, he's kind of conflating it with like, oh, just take the money. It's just like, what money? What kind of money? For what reason? Like, why are we just taking this money just because we're poor and destitute? It's like, no, we're owed something. So it's not just give us money. It's like, give us our reparations.
It's not happened, though. That has not happened.
What do you mean?
That has not happened.
It
hasn't been a reparations. It hasn't been this or that. It has been a welfare program,
welfare
Great
was
Societies
designed.
Act, that was built off of the idea of, hey, we get these families split up, we get these.
So
then he caught on to like him putting it with reparations.
I mean, I guess so, but I guarantee.
But the Democrats didn't want to.
Why would you not advocate for that?
So, in your, I guess, research of like history of this country and everything, do you find like the Reconstruction era and like the failures of like what it wanted to be and then what it ended up being, and then which led into, had downstream effects to enter into the Jim Crow era. And, you have policies like redlining that influence, how schools are funded. The downstream effects of slavery, do you think, put black people as generally in a worse off position
Yes.
than white Americans?
I think generation by generation, the effects of slavery have been diluted, but generation by generation.
This is that trick bag that they be getting these black conservatives with. Is that, oh, the effects of it has been diluted. Don't you do that. Don't you say that. That is so incorrect, and it's so factually incorrect. Because the effects of slavery, not only was it like economically and financially bad, but the effects of slavery also came through, what is it called? They say that trauma can even be inherited through the genes of the mother. So it's like, if your mom was like R-worded or something, like that pain and that trauma is going to travel down to that child. Like we are still suffering from the effects of slavery, the mental effects, the emotional effects. I don't know, maybe even physical effects from the experiments that they've been doing on us when we were enslaved in this country, which we still kind of are technically. But it's like the stuff that they done to us, bro. It's like it did not dilute. And if it diluted, it probably diluted from 100% to 99.99%. That's about as much as it diluted throughout these past 100-something years. Because because truth be told, slavery never ended in the 1800s. It never, to be quite honest, slavery been existing all the way through the 1900s. So if we really want to go there, he's making a case that slavery, the effects of it are diluted. They have never been diluted. Where has there been any type of restitution for the people who've been through all of the horrors of slavery? Where is the restitution for, where's the therapy? What type of therapy can you give to a Black American descendant of a slave? What type of therapy is specific for us, for all the trauma that our people went through that we inherited? What about what specifically has been done to heal the trauma that we've been through? There has been nothing to heal the trauma. And until that trauma has been healed through things like reparations and reparation programs, you can't say that this stuff has been diluted, especially when the white to Black wealth and income are still so vastly separated. With white Americans controlling so much of the wealth, and then even other immigrant groups coming in and controlling larger amounts of wealth than we do, and we've been here longer than anybody else, including the white British people who came over here, because we were brought over also by the Spaniards prior to. So it's like we've been here longer than almost anybody, and the fact that we haven't been able to have something specifically for us, to the point where it's like we are solidified as an actual racial, social, economic powerhouse in our own right. We can't even say that we're Black Americans and separate ourselves from the other Black diasporan, our other Black diasporan brothers and sisters. We can't even say that we're Black American specific, because white people don't want to see us that way. They want to lump us all together. Even other racial groups don't want to see us as separate. And even our own Black diaspora and brothers and sisters from the Caribbean, Africa, or Europe, they kind of want to come and it feels like they just want to come and leech off of what we got and claim Blackness when it benefits them, and then separate afterwards. So it's we don't even get to claim ourselves, honestly. So it's you can't just sit here and say that the effects of slavery and whatnot are diluted when we are still at such a low position and low point in throughout this country, which of course I'm pretty sure he's going to end up blaming on us, because we didn't do anything throughout all of these years.
The effects of racism, welfare-based policies, and things of that nature became even more great. So in the 1880s or so, when we had our first Black members of Congress, which were indeed Republicans, I think that was a great start for things. But obviously we had terrible things that happened, like the Tulsa massacre, among Black people being chased out of their homes by the KKK.
Sure.
All funded by the Democrat Party, all supported by the Democrat Party.
Well, I need to stop you there.
Democrat or Republican,
can you
attribute
not to the party but to the ideology? Because I think when you think, regardless of whatever the party switch was, traditionally conservative values did not that's more aligned with more racist policies
It's
in this
very
country.
difficult to compare 2020's conservatism to 1880s conservatism. Oh, I was loving the 1v4.
So personally, I feel like there's really only one thing that white people have a true advantage over black people with, and it's that white people are less likely to be forced into a box. It happens with black people onto other black people, but it especially happens with white liberals onto black conservatives, where we are told that we are supposed to think a certain way, be a certain way, and if we're not, then we're called all these names like etc. And the worst of all is bootlicker, because I hate when a white liberal tells me as a black man that I'm a bootlicker.
I ain't gonna hold you. I do not know how to pronounce that dude's name. Xavier, or is it just Xavier and it just has an E? I mean, just have an A. I don't know. I think it's just Xavier with an A.
Because then I ask, whose boot am I licking? Because you're telling me as a white person that me as a black person that I'm licking your boot because I don't think in this box that you want me to frame my mentality in. That to me is real racism. And that's what we need to stop allowing to happen to us, because black people are so quick now to not branch out and to have new ways of.
All right, this is another trick bag about oh, this is racism. The thing is that racism, that word has been so played out, it's kind of like we shouldn't even really use it like that no more. Honestly, you should just focus on using words like anti-blackness, because racism could just be like, oh, you called an Asian person a slur, or you called a Jewish person a slur. But it's like when it comes to black people, it's more like anti-blackness is much more of what affects us than just racism itself. It's like it's anti-blackness more so at this point than just racism. But him saying that, oh, y'all are calling me like all these derogatory, names that you call black people for siding with white people, and it's like you white conservatives are calling me this. I'm like, yeah, they do the stuff like that, which is hilarious to me. It shows it does show the racist intent that they also have when they're like, oh, you licking the white man's boot because you're becoming a conservatives. It's like, you're no different, bro. You're no different. It's like, I saw a meme once. It was like, it said, Black Americans, can we have reparations? Republicans, no. Democrats, no. Rainbow flag, BLM. It's like, it's like they're both the same races, except for Democrats got a couple of more colors on their flag. That's really all it is.
Thinking, or to go into careers like agriculture and these other career paths that black people don't typically get into. It's not because of racism stopping them from getting in there. It's because we're told for so long that you have to follow this path and you have to think a certain.
Racism stopping them from getting in there, but what about all the black farmers who are suing the USDA or whoever because they weren't letting them, they were treating them unfairly. So it's like the half truths, bro. It's like black people do need to get into fields like agriculture again, yes. However, we're not going to sit here and pretend like they didn't face any struggles in there.
Way.
I think America is a great place for a black person. I think I'm an American. Anything that's available to you is available to me and mine.
I question where these black people come from. I do. I question their background. Like, America is a great place for a black person. I don't know about that one. Especially with everything that has happened to us from past to present, I would not fix my lips to say something like that.
I've personally never experienced white people having way more privileges than me. Like, I'm sure you could find certain institutions where black people are treated differently, but in general, I don't think that I've missed out on anything because of being black. And if anything, it's given me more of a voice because people will want to hear what I say now because I'm black.
I would actually say it's more because you're a black female, but not necessarily because you're black. And it's not that people care more when you're black. It's just that people want to weaponize a black voice so that they can be able to have someone confirm their biases or confirm their beliefs. It's like, how Thomas Sowell is the type of black person that white people say, oh, I have a black friend. His name is Thomas Sowell. She's that's the type of black voice they care about. They don't care about a black voice like Professor Black Truth or Jason Black or Tariq Nasheed or Dr. Umar. They don't care about those black voices, but they care about the black voices. They care about black voices of like Thomas Sowell and like these black conservatives of here. Those are the ones they care about. Or Candace Owens, stuff like that. Those are the black voices they care about. They don't care about real black voices. They just care about black voices that confirm what they want to believe.
So if anything, I have more of a platform now just on the basis of being a black conservative and saying what's not popular than I would if I was just a white person who was also conservative.
I agree with the Supreme Court's decision to end affirmative action.
Now this one right here, and I've already seen a little bit of this before I did a commentary on it. I didn't see the whole thing. I didn't see much of the whole thing. But like this agreed to with the Supreme Court's decision to end affirmative action. If we really look at it, white women are the biggest benefactors of affirmative action. They've been able to benefit more from it than anybody else. And not only that, but if we really want to consider affirmative action, when we look at how like white people were given free land to move to the West, it's like they were already given everything that they needed and everything that they could ever want when they came over here. White people from all over Europe came over here to get free stuff and free benefits. And and they got it simply because they were white and because they were white men. So if we really want to talk about affirmative action, white men have had the biggest affirmative action in this country from the inception. So white men have always had the affirmative action. And then with affirmative action being an actual thing as an actual thing, like an actual law, then white women were able to take, full benefit of it as well. So it's like white men and white women have always benefited from affirmative action. So if you really want to end it, at this point, I think that it doesn't even matter to a black person, especially a black man. It does, and especially a black American man. It does not matter whether it's there or not, because we're always still given the short end of the stick. So I don't think it even matters whether it's there or not.
I think
I got to use a different video player.
I'm gonna start. Someone else can start. Sorry.
I think affirmative action has served its purpose. I think that it was necessary for a particular time. And I think that every black person knows how to get into college. You can pull out the names, the Oprah, President Obama. You can pull out the head of Time Warner was black man, the Forbes was black man. We know what to do now. We don't need affirmative action anymore.
But all these CEOs or whatnot, what are their backgrounds though? Just because they're black doesn't mean that they come from a hard area. Just because they're black doesn't mean that they never had any, white benefits to them. Like Obama, his family, if you look back far enough, had slaves on his white side. And his dad is African, who has absolutely no connection to this land at all. His only connection to this land is a white family that had slaves. That is all that so it's like just to say Obama is not someone whose family came through the lineage of slavery by being a slave. He's connected to this country by his lineage of owning slaves. So it's like you got to be very specific about what you're really saying or what you're talking about when you're talking about all these people who were like in these positions or whatever. It's like that he was chosen specifically, I'm pretty sure, for that reason. Because he was talking about I don't believe we should pay back reparations. Of course not, because you would have to pay it. Like you would have to pay it. Your family would have to pay it. So it's like, yeah, it's like you have to pay that to Michelle and your kids because of your lineage of being attached to a slave owner. So it's like when they say like, oh, it served its purpose. No, it didn't. Because it should have been for black Americans solely, but then they said, oh, it's going to be for all minorities. And then white women became a minority, and then they usurped all of the benefit from it. So it's like it never did what it was supposed to do. Or actually, you can say it did what it was supposed to do because it wasn't supposed to help black Americans. And it surely didn't. So it's not that it should go away because, oh, we don't need it anymore. It should go away because it never worked.
And to me, affirmative action is offensive sometimes, especially nowadays, because I have 6 children.
And that's a genuine concern,
2 boys,
too.
4 girls. And all of them went to Harvard and Columbia and this one and that one. And it breaks my heart to think that they accomplished that goal of getting into these institutions just because of the color of their skin.
But the thing is that how many of those Harvard, how many of those Princeton, how many of all these people who got it, how many of all these white people who got in there were just average Joes, but they just had connections? Like, if you really want to go there, it's like there's been plenty of white people who've gotten in there, not on the merit of their own work, but on the merit of who they know and who they're related to. There have been plenty of white people who've gone to these prestigious PWIs who, to be quite honest, don't deserve it. So for them to be like, oh, you're black, the only reason you got in here is because you're black. It's like the only reason you got in here because you're white. So it's like, if you really want to go there, we can just throw that right back at you. Because how many white people get stuff that they don't deserve in this country? It happens all the time.
I can definitely say that it creates a lot of tension when you have affirmative action. I remember my first week at the University of Illinois, I was sitting with some classmates and a white student turned to me and jokingly like, hey, Xavier, like, did you just attach a smiley face when you applied for this college? And I started asking what he meant, and he said to me that he was like, you're black, I'm assuming you had decent grades. You could have just attached a smiley face and you would have gotten into the university. So I was livid by that, and I went off, I started naming all of my accomplishments, and I felt so confident.
Why are you trying to name, like, list your accomplishments to this dude who don't care about you? Like, why do you want this dude to see you as an equal? You are there to get your education. You're not just there to make white people okay with the fact that you're there. It doesn't matter if they're okay with you being there on your merit or just because of the color of your skin. It does not matter. You are there to get what you can and get out. You're not like yes, you do go to college to also make connections, but that's just a connection you don't need to have right there. But the fact that you were so like hurt by that to the point where you felt that you had to prove yourself to this dude, this racist white dude, like, bro, that shows me that you trying to get some approval, bro. And that right there is something I can't get jiggy with.
Only for about an hour, because then an hour later I started saying to myself, like, wow, like, did I actually earn my way in here? I started to have this insecurity, and I started wondering to myself, did I earn this position myself, or did my ancestors' suffering earn this for me?
And to
Hey, our ancestors' suffering earned us a lot. It earned us a lot. So whether they don't like it because they don't get to take advantage of it, it's like y'all been able to take advantage of whiteness in this country from the inception, bro. Why should we not be able to take advantage of what our people have been through in this country? It don't matter what they think, bro. You go in there and you get yours.
I've seen it in the sense of like affirmative action taking away from other people who are minorities. Like I had a friend who was Asian and he in high school and he really wanted to go to MIT. That was his dream school. He interned there. He was super like prepared to go there and he didn't get in. And you can only assume that it was because of affirmative action because they have such a large Asian population that they want to admit other people.
Yeah, I was going to actually argue that it's more racist nowadays because it excludes so many Asian Americans from getting into universities who do deserve a spot and they can't get in because of affirmative action, which again, like you were saying, was necessary at the time, but now it's like anybody, if you have the skills.
But then again, why are Asians now complaining about how they was like, oh, we made a mistake? they're complaining about how, like, since affirmative action is gone, it's like, oh yeah, no, we just played ourselves. It's like, yeah, because now they really don't have to let you in. They was letting y'all in. It's like they were letting y'all in because, like, yeah, y'all had good grades and whatnot, but also is because they had diversity. They needed to have diversity in there, and since Asians are the model minority, they let them in on the basis of just that alone. But it's like now that they don't need minorities, it's like, oh well, we don't even need y'all here no more, so we just get rid of y'all. And now they're like, oh man, that sucks. It's like, yeah. It's like y'all had it good when affirmative action was in there, but now that y'all fought to get rid of it, now y'all really screwed.
To do it and you're in America, you can get in.
I don't think affirmative action is the worst thing, considering all the different types or aspects of a background you might take into account when somebody's getting into college, whether they were in certain clubs, Boy Scouts, what type of classes they took that might not be available to everybody. I don't think that factoring in the affirmative action is necessarily a bad thing, but I feel like because of everything you guys have said, the optics behind it are so horrible today that even if it is slightly beneficial in the long run for certain people, I think we can probably refocus most of that into figuring out like the class that people come from, the neighborhoods, the backgrounds or whatever, without it having to necessarily target race. The only thing that I kind of wonder now that it's gone is instead of a black person being in school thinking like, man, am I here because I'm an affirmative action pick, is it going to be a kid that is poor or a kid that's from a different zip code?
I think we should do away with all of it. Just like submit an application, no demographics. Why do they ask your sexuality? Like, why do they ask all that stuff?
Because demographics are important, no matter how much you like to say it's not.
Accomplished its purpose, why do we still see the disparities that we do in the professional workplace?
Mm-hmm.
If you
And
average
hiring.
white wealth and compare it to black wealth totals, white people as a whole have about 50 times greater wealth than black people as a whole per capita. So I just don't understand why you think affirmative action has accomplished its purpose. I don't see that.
Curious, why do you assume that just because there is a disparity means it's because of a racial issue?
And this right here, this is that other trick bag. This is where they start saying that, oh, it's our fault for not doing it because we don't have dads. Our culture is nothing but gangbanging, sexual degeneracy, hatred of one another, and crabs in a barrel. That's where they start saying that, you know, we're our own worst enemy type talk. And it's like, that's only true to a certain extent, but we are in a system of white supremacy that also increases these type of behaviors in our society, which is why they often push for all of these destructive things about black people into the media. They either push that black men and women can't get along, or they'll push that black women and white men, or black men and white women get along, or even black men and white men, or white women and white women and black women. Like, they'll push whatever is not black men and black women coming together and building a society. So it's like the white power structure, they push this image that get us to not want to do these things. And then you have people like her who will say, oh, it's our fault, pretty much, on that time, like, you know, that Thomas Sowell type of talk.
What else would it be from?
I mean,
upbringing, economic ability.
There we go.
Desire to go.
There we go.
Desire to.
I mean,
So
zip
there
code
we
does play
go.
a lot. If you grow up in a
There we
neighborhood
go.
that experiences a lot of trauma, you're not as likely to do as well in school, which means you're.
Why did they grow up in a neighborhood that experiences a lot of trauma?
I mean, lots of people
Racism.
do.
Yes, but why specifically do more black
Anti-blackness.
people?
Government assistance programs.
Government assistance programs, like what?
Try redlining.
I mean, you can go into that if you'd like to, but let's take
What
a
do you
look
mean
at
that if you like
Great
to? It's
Societies
true.
Act, which was created to kick black fathers out of the home and get black mothers on welfare assistance. These things aren't beneficial for economics. These things aren't beneficial for actually paving a way for success for black children and black families. I mean, reducing a two-family household to a one-family household isn't going to make them the richest man in the world. It isn't even going to get them out of high school. Nonetheless,
You mean
the ability
parent.
to even get to college.
You mean
Yeah,
two-parent?
the child, yes, but a two-parent household
Yeah.
in comparison to a one-parent household, that child is not going to be nearly as successful. That child is more disposed to
Bro,
being
you knew
sent
he was talking
into
about.
prison by doing crimes or not doing very well in school. So how are they even supposed to get that, that wealth disparity shrunk if they aren't even able to get out of the community that is causing these problems for them?
Something I think that this conversation illustrates is that like affirmative action is literally the very end of the line of a lot of different parts of a person's life. And by that point, trying to rectify all of the inequities that have existed, to try to remedy any of that at the very end with affirmative action, it might just be too broad a brush. And maybe we'd be better served focusing on the earlier issues than trying to throw a kid who maybe, can barely read at a 6th grade level into a college to hope that that's the thing that fixes the problem at the end of the line.
So basically, what he needs to say is that reparations are necessary. Without honestly, affirmative action was like they tried to use it as a reparation thing. However, they gave it to everybody, which totally nullified it. So it's like, since black Americans are the one doing the worst out of everything, it's like we need our reparations. Affirmative action doesn't help. All of these programs that they do, they always give it to everybody else, or black and Latino, or black and or minority groups, or whatever. They don't just want to give black Americans something specifically because they don't want us to get from the bottom of the racial socioeconomic hierarchy. They want us at the bottom. So so giving us reparations or anything specifically for us is going to disrupt everybody else's standing, which they don't want.
I think affirmative action wasn't really supposed to send kids to Harvard that weren't prepared to go to Harvard. I think that's quite a myth, in fact. I think those that have the qualities to get to Harvard were, before affirmative action, were just completely overlooked. You know, Clarence Thomas is like the perfect example. You know, regardless of what you think about him, he was able to get to Harvard because of affirmative action, because, you know, it focused on finding people that were, you know, again, like just overlooked for those.
But things ended up changing. It morphed into something else. So what started out as a good program of giving all black people, or people with a lesser chance or lesser opportunity, it started out as that, and then it morphed. And I'm not sure who morphed it, but it morphed into, okay, so now we have to have one
the
black,
government,
one
Republicans,
Hispanic,
and
one
Democrats.
This, one that.
That's not how that works.
But hey, talk to the corporations, talk to the people who hire, talk to the board members who say we need to have a woman on the board, we need to have a black on the board, we need to have a Latina, a Latinx, whatever, on the board. So it morphed from helping us into now
Tokenization.
Yes. So you have to have
that
one
is
of this,
true.
one of that.
It's always, but it's
Well, when you
always been
start with a
tokenization.
country where people only hire you if you're white, that's necessary. And I know that you said that it started good and then ended well.
reparations
And I don't
are
think that affirmative action
necessary.
was perfect by any measure, but we still see really, really bad inequality. So if you're going to get rid of affirmative action, what's the replacement?
Meritocracy.
Reparations.
There's no meritocracy in
Yes,
this
there
country. You look at Elon Musk, he's destroying Twitter. There's no meritocracy. That's ridiculous.
Well, first thing I want to bounce back to is it's not a myth that there are like minorities that are being put into colleges that they're not ready for. If you look at a lot of these top universities, including Harvard, Yale, etc., you're going to see a lot of minorities on academic probation because they are being placed in universities that they are not ready for. They are not cut out for that just yet. And it even just makes sense if you look at how much they have to achieve in order to get there. Asian students on average have to score 450 points higher than a black student in order to get in the same university. So if you think of the universities that have courses, etc., that grade on a curve, you can only have so many people with an A, so many people with a B, etc. So that means that the bottom percentile is going to fail. Who is most likely, just based on logic, going to be the ones failing? It's going to be the people who didn't have the credentials to get there in the first place. And then I have to bounce back to.
I want to get you on that point, because I would posit that the people who are least likely to have good outcomes in an academic setting are those who have to work 2 jobs, are those who have to drive there from home because they can't afford a dorm, are those who have to go into crippling financial debt. These are and have other stresses in their life. They can't afford a doctor, they can't afford a dentist, they can't afford anything.
I had to do
so
that too, though.
Those are the
That's
people.
not just black people. It's not just.
But it's
If we're looking at
overwhelmingly.
straight numbers, there are more white people in poverty than black people.
If you look at the
I
wrong
mean,
numbers,
but there's,
if
I
you
mean,
add
but
up
there's
the numbers
more.
we're
Wrong
talking
numbers.
Nah, boy, you ain't finna just slide with that one. There's more white people than black people in this country, technically. So if you really want to go there, it's like, oh, there's more white people in jail, but it's like there's more white people. Or there's more white people who are poor, but there's more white people than everybody else. So that right there, that point was just like, was not a good point that he made.
No
The
number
issue
is
is poverty
wrong.
in general, though. I don't think it's like who's in poverty. It's like poverty sucks. It
Maybe we
shouldn't
should make
matter
college
who's in it.
free, and maybe we want to have
If you have a
affirmative action
program-
wouldn't be that necessary.
It'll get even more ghetto.
If you have a program that says if you are under a certain income level, this is how we'll help you, that will overwhelmingly help black people at a far greater percentage than it will help white people.
You see, then that's enough. That's one of those rising tide lift all boats. Rising tide lift all boats doesn't help black people. It never does. Because if our boat is upside down, what would adding more water to the lake, what would that do if our boat is already upside down? It would make it harder for us to flip over. Like, bro, it's like you don't add more water when your boat is upside down. You got to flip that boat over, and that's what reparations is. It's getting that boat over, getting all of the water out of it, getting us some new equipment, and putting us back out there on that water. That's what reparations is. So that we can get back out there and our boat can actually be, a reputable one. Like everybody out here got on speedboats or yacht or whatnot, and we out here in the dang canoe that's upside down. It's like, it's not fair. But he's talking about like a rising tide, like, oh, that'll disproportionately help black people. It's like, no, it wouldn't. Because there are, like he said, there's a lot of poor white people as well, and they will get priority over black people. Why? Because because affirmative action is gone. So it's like that wouldn't help either.
Trump supports Black Lives.
Now, I'm not gonna hold you. I don't know if he really does or not. I'm pretty sure he doesn't, but I don't. I'm pretty. I mean, to be quite honest, nobody in government does. This country in general doesn't. So I would just have to say, yeah, nah, he don't. Oh, somebody step. Oh, well, I'm about to say somebody stepped forward. That's crazy. Of course, it's the conservatives. What?
I think that President Trump supports all lives. I think that he looks at all American citizens as equal. I don't see him
Boy, that's a lie.
doing anything that would make you feel like he does not support Black lives. That's, of course, going to lead into the conversation of Black Lives Matter, which
If you don't support reparations, you don't care about Black lives.
was a movement and an organization with so much corruption. Donald Trump not supporting that organization doesn't mean that he doesn't support Black lives. It just means that he doesn't support the fraudulent organization that's stealing so much money from so
That
many people
organization
and
is
absolutely nothing
fraudulent.
with it. Nor does he support a destructive movement that is destroying cities, communities, lives, etc. So I don't see why someone would think that President Trump doesn't
I
support
mean,
Black
why
lives.
would you put that? I mean, you can't put all that destruction on the group itself. It's because, sometimes people are hired to mess stuff up. Like, crisis actors, all this other type of stuff. People are paid to just go in there and just wreak havoc and wreck shop just to destroy legitimacy. Like, that stuff happens all the time. So it's like, oh yeah, they're destroying cities and stuff. It's like, yeah, but who do they work for? But BLM is a goofy organization in general. Like, they are very like let's build our foundation off of police killing mainly cisgendered, heteronormative Black American men, and let's make a campaign so that we can support Black, queer, and trans lives, even though they're not the ones getting killed by police like that. So it's like, let's use these deaths of mostly Black American heterosexual cisgendered males and use it to push our, Black queer agenda. It's like, nah, bro, that's fraudulent. And then getting all that money and buying all them houses, it's like, bro, get out of here, bro. That money could have went, like, they talking about boarding it for what, like media stuff. Like, man, get out of here, bro.
I've heard him say he knows all the best Black people. He has all the best Black friends. I do support Black people all the time. Sorry, that was a very bad impression, but I don't think Donald Trump wants bad things to happen to Black people. So in that respect, I think he does support Black lives. But the other side of that is he's not really doing anything. He didn't do anything as president certainly to uplift Black people.
The economy affects Black people.
Yeah, I certainly disagree with that point. One of the big
That rising tide lift all boats is a lie. That is not something that you can just throw in there as a legitimate point. You can't do that. The economy helps Black people. The economy helps everybody. But if we're at the bottom of the economy, it doesn't help us get out of the bottom.
biggest things I
What does he do for the
supported
economy?
personally. Well, yeah. We'll get into that one later. One of the biggest things he did is he secured permanent funding for HBCUs, one of the largest increases we ever saw for HBCUs, personally done by his administration.
How many Black people are really going to college right now? How many jobs have we been seeing where they say you don't even need a college degree? That means nothing.
Among many other things, the First Step Act, which, there's a lot of debate about whether it was really the best thing to do, but that was definitely a kiss of love to the Black race.
I ain't gonna hold you. This boy talking right now, he just needs to stop, bro. A kiss of love to the Black boy. Reparations.
Freeing Alice Johnson for menial drug crimes she committed in the past that had her locked up. She did not get to see her family for years.
Yeah, but that's not okay, I did say I agree, but I agree in the sense that Donald Trump doesn't literally want bad things to happen to Black people, like I think a lot of conservatives do. So I think that he just says the most yeah, I do think that. I think he says the things that will get him elected. So I don't think that he has any personal grudges against most people. He just says the most popular thing. So I think Ron DeSantis would be somebody that I think actually wants Black people to be hurt. So by that standard, yeah, Donald Trump supports Black lives by leaps and bounds.
You think Donald Trump says the most popular thing?
Yeah.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Then why do so many people hate him?
He got elected
Bro.
as president.
Bro. You're like, you think he says a popular thing? Yes, he says the popular thing. We live in a day and age where all you got to do is be negative. Negativity sells, bro. I call it playing to the negative, but if you look in media and marketing, they play to the negative, bro. You offer a product and you make it, this superhero that destroys the negative whatever. It's all about negativity. Negativity gets clicks, and negativity gets you elected in a sense. So it's like, yeah, he says the popular stuff. It doesn't matter if people hate you. What do they say? What is it? No attention is bad attention, or something like that.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
He didn't win the popular vote.
He didn't have to.
That's a
That's
liberal
what your
talking
side
point.
wants to say.
That's
Yeah.
a liberal
that's a-
talking
I'm
point.
helping you here. I'm trying to
But
see the logic in
I'm
this.
not-
Obviously, he says things to be elected as a politician very similarly to how Joe Biden did, except Joe Biden actually has a history of racism.
If he said things that people
Trump has
didn't
a
like,
history
he
of
wouldn't have been
racism
our
with his
president.
housing.
So you like everything that Donald Trump says? You think everything he says is popular?
I love a lot of the things he says. I think he's hilarious. When he said big water, that was one of my favorite quotes. Big water.
Water, big water, ocean water.
He has the funniest one-liner, so I love a lot of things he says. Policy sucks, but
I'm just shocked you're wearing a Hunter Biden hat. He likes a different kind of one line.
I know conservatives love talking about his.
No, Coke. It's different. Coke, not.
Bruh.
Trump is less of the issue and more so the people that support him, like Die Hard. They facilitate that kind of like hate, I think, for a lot of people, not just black people, but like.
I mean, this man took out like a full page in a newspaper calling for the public execution of 5 black kids. His hotels, all of his businesses have rampant history of denying black people apartments or whatever. So
I forgot about that. I should not have stepped forward.
Look, I mean, Donald Trump cares about Donald Trump, so I don't think he really cares about anyone, I guess, unless you're like super rich or whatever.
When you look at his history on racial issues, whether it's the shithole countries comment, the plethora of comments he made about Mexican people, just the comments he's made about Muslims, the idea that Trump cares at all about some particular racial minority, I think is a little bit silly. I think Trump will say whatever he needs to say to rile up his base and to get elected.
I don't necessarily think those statements come from a place of hatred. I don't think he was ever saying.
He said he was doing that to get elected.
If you
and
pray
be
5
popular.
times a day towards the east or towards Mega based on wherever you are, you're a bad person. I think he was saying if you like to fly planes into towers or behead people or throw people off of buildings, maybe you're not the most virtuous person out there.
I supported Trump because
Let's look at the history of America. Slaves, dismembering them, forcing them to breed, even if they're family members. Let's see. Conducting. I think they said there was a woman who conducted sex changes on them in Louisiana. Tariq put me onto that. What else is there? Separating families so that they never see their kids again. Raping people on a constant. Oh, I'm not saying that. R-wording people on a constant. There's been a lot of there's been a lot of like very terrible things that people have done in this lynching and like cutting off genitalia, cutting fetuses out of mothers' bellies and stomping them to death in front of the mother, like bruh, like virtuous, like bruh, America's never been virtuous, honestly.
he made the economy good, and so the economy then impacted black people, white people, Latino people. It impacted everybody. But Trump, he didn't think specifically, I don't think, about black people. He thought about himself, and he thought about how can I make America great for me, and making and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna go with this guy, and the reason I'm gonna go with this guy is because if he can make America great and he can make that
rising tide lifting all
so
boats,
that's why I went,
garbage.
and that's why I voted for him. That's why I supported him.
How does that specifically benefit black people?
It
Again, he's a businessman, but he's also a racist businessman, like well documented. So like
And Biden's not.
Oh yeah, Biden is too.
Biden's not. Well,
Biden is.
He created the crime bill.
So
that's regardless of the
Well,
point.
address the Central Park 5. That's what you brought up, right? How do you feel about that?
Well,
he took that full
actually,
page out
okay,
after they were
so
exonerated.
I haven't
He wanted them
dealt-
to be killed,
Well,
That is why I didn't
executed,
step forward,
just because they were
of
black.
That story.
And
But,
he
yeah.
he bars people from attending his businesses or like renting apartments from all his like stupid Trump towers. I just like.
I think Trump at that point was, like many people in this room, particularly liberals, a victim of the media. I think he was scared. I think he was ashamed of the things that he heard in the news and wanted to take action himself as a businessman, not as a
Why
racist.
are you infantilizing him?
I'm about to say, bro, like, what?
Bringing up this comparison to the 93 crime bill from Biden. That crime bill, this was at the height of like violent crime and the crack epidemic in the United States. The Congressional Black Caucus supported that crime bill. Everybody in the United States supported.
That Congressional Black Caucus. How many of them were Boule members? How many of them were black immigrants or descendant of black immigrants? A lot of the Congressional Black Caucus weren't even people who family members been through the lineage of slavery. So they literally don't matter. Like their voices and whatnot does not matter. Like in like all seriousness, like if you're talking about Black Congressional Black Caucus is anything legitimate, as far as being, a staple for black people, no. They care about immigrants. They care about LGBTQ issues. They care about everything except for black Americans. So like using them as like using them to like justify that is completely telling. And not only that, but I'm like with him and Hillary is like super predators and whatnot. It's like, yeah, like they put all this stuff on us during the height of like, crime and gang violence and drugs and whatnot. But it's like, who put the drugs in there in the first place? Who put them in there? Who let them get in there in the first place? A Republican dude. And then he wanted to show how tough on crime he was so that he can appeal to these Republican dudes. Like, bro, like, that wasn't done out of like some benevolence. That was done out of racism as well.
Supported that crime bill. The idea that crime bill was like some racist piece of legislation that Biden was just wheeling out because he hates black people, and that's somehow comparable to the Donald Trump's treatment of the Central Park Five that were already exonerated. That wasn't a victim of the media. The media said they were done. They were exonerated in court. They weren't there.
As I understand it, the prosecutor of the five, he was a black guy, and so in being a black guy, he went and he looked at all the evidence and said these guys are guilty.
Black people can also be racist against other black people.
That is, I'm hearing that from a white person is crazy. But, like, yeah, that's what all four of them black people up there are. They're, like, and it's funny when white liberals call black people, like, Uncle Ruckuses and whatnot, but it's like, y'all ain't no better either. So it's like, but yeah, there are black people who go against the best interests of black people, like the Congressional Black Caucus. But it's like, that happened.
Make mistakes.
So if anybody does anything you disagree with in regards to the Central Park Five, even if they themselves are a black person, they're just a self-loathing black person. They're just a racist black person.
If they disagree with me, they're racist.
That prosecutor was doing his job.
That's my policy. If they disagree with me, they're racist.
I like that.
I think Trump has shown a history of ignorant at best and racist at worst behavior. I didn't vote for him or Hillary because I just don't see him as a conservative hero. I don't even think he's a conservative.
Fake conservative. I voted Trump in 2016, just so you all know. So I'm just saying.
So I need you to elaborate on if people disagree with you, they're racist, just in general.
I was just kidding.
That was a joke, boy.
Just like the hat. Sorry if I triggered you. I'm sorry.
You made a point. You made a point a couple of minutes back where you said he just kind of says these things to rile up his base. Why does he need to do that at the expense of black people then?
He doesn't do that.
Yes, he does it at the expense of everybody.
Like, oh man,
that man does that at the expense of everybody, bro. Grab her by the what? I got the what flu? They come from what countries? You need to send all who back to their countries because we don't have the same religion. The Central Park Five were exonerated, but they still need to be bodied. Like, this dude literally says stuff about everybody that is on the mind of a racist white person, bro. Or at least a extroverted racist white person. An external racist white person rather than an internal racist white person, which also triggers them as well.
and this is amazing. And I don't know, you can call me
So
self-loathing, you can call me
so
self-hating,
you're
you can call me
saying calling
racist.
for
I
the
can call you
public
stupid.
execution of 5 black men that were exonerated to
When has
rile
he
up
done
his
that during the
base.
campaign trail? He didn't do that when he was a politician.
Well,
He did that when he
again,
was a
it's
scared businessman in New
everything.
York.
It's
feeling
everything
bad.
Steve said about
Isn't that
the comments about
performative?
Muslims, the comments about Mexican immigrants. Why does he
Never
need-
about Mexican immigrants, never about Muslims, about terrorists and about criminals and rapists.
How many white people fit that criteria? How many white people fit that criteria? How long did it take for the KKK to be known as a terrorist or a domestic terrorist organization? How long did it take for them to come up with the black identity extremists? Yeah.
These are very important delineations to make, and if you believe
I
that
think
when
you
you are fed the media
understand,
about,
or
oh, it's
I
all
think
Mexican immigrants, I think it's more of you being, oh man, oh, these poor Mexicans, they need to be supported. It's more of that savior complex. Wow.
That is true. Democrats do have a huge savior complex. But then again, Republicans or conservatives also have a savior complex when black people find out that Democrats are just closeted racists or just a bunch of closeted racists. Once they find that out, then it's like the conservatives become, oh, I'm your savior because I can show you the way. Now that you understand how bad the Democratic Party is, you can come join us. And it's like, no, you jumping from the skillet to the fire, bro.
What was the
back
rationale
again.
behind axing or trying to axe DACA? These people were registered with the federal government, they were in school, they were doing everything that they needed to do. They had no home elsewhere. They were brought into this country as minors. Like, what's the explanation for that?
I think that requires more nuance. Like I mentioned before, I think there were some
for their
people.
education.
I think
Why
there
would
were
you
some
wanna kick
people
them out?
feeding him bad policy advice, thinking, "Oh, this will be really good for your base," and he's doing a lot as a
Just
president.
That's
infantilizing
okay.
him.
That's okay if we feel that way. But
So,
at the end of the
if I take responsibility for something, if I say he has responsibility for something, well then you're right. But if I'm saying, well, maybe there are some people around him advising him falsely,
Dude,
it's infantilizing.
He
him.
was the president.
There's no good way.
He
through this
called
for
the
him.
shots. What are you talking about?
The
I'm
only
saying-
path forward to solving illegal immigration starts with amnesty for everybody here. The reality is there's some 10 to 15 million illegal immigrants here. We're not deporting them all.
With the people who are already here, that's a lot more of a messy, nuanced conversation. But as far as people coming in, I do think we need stronger borders and actual vetting happening.
And I just want to say,
Stronger borders and stronger vetting. All right, now look, I believe from what I do believe, black civil rights activists were actually against immigration. They didn't support it at all because they knew that once immigration happens, they would white supremacists in the government would then use them as a buffer class between blacks and whites, and they would use them to undercut black Americans so that we wouldn't be able to have work, we wouldn't be able to have all these other things. So it's funny enough when they say that white people are the ones who be saying they took her job, it's really black people that they took the jobs from, and black Americans to be specific, and black American men to be even more specific, and black American men between the ages of 18 to 35 and even more specific, which also just so happens to make up the majority of black male prison population. So it's like with us having no work or whatnot, we turn to crime, which then will end up getting us put in jail or dead. So it's like with immigration, it's like, yeah, immigration may not be the best thing, but I've even heard Hispanic immigrants kind of they kind of not wanting so many immigrants to come over here. And it's like, how would you not want other people to come over here if you just benefited from it yourself? Like, why would you not want your people to come and benefit? Because they already know that they got over here, now they get a slice of the pie. But if everybody comes over here, that slice always shrinks. So it's like, they talking about border control because other people are terrorists, and it's like, no, it's border control because there's not a lot of resources, with the 1% hogging up all of the wealth in this country. And then the Democrats want to keep bringing them in, and it's like, why do the Democrats keep wanting to bring in so many immigrants? Is it to boost their numbers because they classify themselves as white, and their population may not be as big as they say it is? Is it because they want to have more voters for the Democratic Party so that they know that since black people are stepping out of voting, I think even Asian people have always had a low voter turnout. They know that they don't have all of these people who would come and vote. They want to allow all types of immigrants in who would vote for them, like maybe invite, like having all the Ukrainian refugees coming over, or having all of the Mexican immigrants come over, or Cuban immigrants coming over, just so that they can have a voter base that they can take advantage of or whatnot. It's like, why do you want them over here? And when they're over here, who do they really affect, if we're being honest?
In Ronald Reagan's day, he was given the promise. He said, look, if you go ahead and you pass this particular bill, we'll give these people amnesty and we're done. And it didn't happen. We didn't. Illegal immigration continued even after Reagan already said we will give these people amnesty. So that's why we get a burr up our butt, because he had already done it.
Hopefully the devil's giving him amnesty.
True.
That's terrible.
No, that's base. Thank you.
Tasteless.
Wow.
Ninth circle, baby.
That political beliefs have changed from the past.
I mean, yeah.
I grew up in a conservative household, actually, in Ohio. And
I mean, yeah, that of course, because when you're young, you grow up and you start to see the world for what it is. The only thing is that when it comes to like being on any side of a political spectrum, once you're on the spectrum, you just become a soldier in that army of whatever belief you choose to partake in. But it's like, the reason why I'm doing this video anyway is because both of these sides are right in some regards, and both of them are also wrong in other regards. The fact that they hold on to a political belief is the reason why they always tell half truths. With the conservatives talking about how bad the Democratic Party has, infiltrated and like messed up the whole black community by their policies and whatnot. That is true. And then on the liberal side, how they're talking about how conservatives haven't done much better and are also very racist as well, which is also true. But when we look at it, the Republicans also have policies that don't specifically help Black Americans, so it makes no sense for them to be on their side. And then for the liberals, it's like they still get their savior complex pat on the back because they feel like they're doing something for a lesser group of people, whether it be because they were wronged or not. It's like, we got to help them. We got to go out there and save them, and it's like that is a savior complex, which makes them kind of sort of feel better than everyone else. And it kind of breeds into a superiority complex. But conservatives, white conservatives, also have that same superiority complex. There is no true difference between both sides of this spectrum, because the spectrum is just, this is what's called political theater. None of these groups care about anybody but themselves. They really don't. There's just who gets to have control over what, who gets to have more control. And that's why I even did this video in the first place, is so that we can see that none of these political organizations are for us. And they can change, just like, like how they say beliefs change, they can always change. And now, like, I follow people like, Jason Black, Professor Black Truth, Serena She, Dr. Umar's, and others as well. And it's like they don't subscribe to any political like group or whatnot, because they don't do anything. It's like you're supposed to back the policies that they have. So if they talking about giving reparations, then it's like, all right, you got to vote. I mean, you got to write it on paper and you got to sign a contract and legally bind yourself to it. And if you don't do it, we get to take it, that type of timing. But if the conservatives want to say, we're going to give Black Americans only reparations and, we're going to sign this contract, then it's like, all right, well, let's go vote Republican this time. And let's go ahead and get that bag. Or if the Democrats are like, what, we've been giving y'all trick bags all this time, so now we're going to give you a real bag of reparations. So we're going to sign this contract, and we're going to sign this contract. We promise that we're going to uphold this, and if you don't, you can take us to whatever, you can take whatever you want from us or whatnot. And it's like, all right, well, we'll vote Democrat this time. But it's like, it doesn't matter whether it's a Democrat or Republican. They're two wings of the same bird or two wings of the same plane. You get what you can from them and then you move on. You don't stay beholden to them. when you stay beholden to them, that's when you don't go anywhere.
Parents were always pretty political, so I always stayed political. I was very religious as a teenager. Sometime during college and then afterwards, especially during COVID, my sister actually indoctrinated me into a more leftist position. And I overcorrected a little bit. I started becoming pretty cringy as far as like, sit down and let the minorities all talk, right? Don't say anything, don't speak over them, etc. They would, it was like the whole you can't speak over Candace Owens even if she's literally a Nazi kind of thing. So and
this dude like, oh my gosh, she's not a Nazi. I mean, I wouldn't say she a Nazi, but she definitely ain't beneficial for anybody black, bro. And didn't she used to like hold some pro-black talking points in the past or so, if I'm not mistaken? And then she switched up on a conservative tip. She's just a grifter if that's the case. But it's like she serves your point, she serves your interest right now. So of course Xavier's gonna like her.
I stand by that. So yeah, I kind of leveled out thankfully, and I'm less cringe now.
Did you? Are you?
I cringed.
This is leveled out. Imagine if we would have been here.
I mean, yeah, he is kind of cringe, bro. I ain't gonna hold you. He said I cringe. I'm like, yeah, this dude is kind of cringy, and he still gives off that aura of like, let the minorities talk. He still gives off that aura.
Maybe I am being cringe. Who cares?
So I grew up conservative, but I did have more left-leaning ideas about like Black Lives Matter and critical race theory, and I was watching a lot of YouTube, and I did agree that black people were oppressed and all of these different things, and that we were kind of got the short end of the stick. And during 2020, when there was everything crazy was happening, and I started organizing rallies against the mandates because I thought that they were just totally unconstitutional and un-American. And then George Floyd dies. And initially I was like enraged like everybody else. And then it started to become this weird like political like agenda masquerading or behind his face. Like the face of what was actually happening started to peel off. And I was like, oh, I mean, I would counter protest BLM activists at my town square when I lived in Texas. And they were some of the most just bitter, vile, horrible people you could ever meet. Meanwhile, like the Confederate group that would protest there against them also, they were like the nicest people ever to me.
Oh my God, I'm gonna give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she's like super young. Maybe she's also like half white because she looked like she could be mixed with some. She look like she ain't full-blooded black. She don't. So I'm gonna give her the benefit of the doubt. But it's like, of course, they would be super nice to you as a black person, just like as a black person arguing against other black people for their benefit. Of course, they're going to treat you nice. Like it would be silly for you to think that they would treat you wrong because of that. They will let you in, but they will always have you on a leash. And like Jason Black says, white supremacy always breaks their tools when they're done. Once they're done with you, then you will see the real side of them. But by that time, it would already be way too late. The damage would have already been done on the black community and to you by the time that happens. So of course they would be nice to you when you're, championing their beliefs, about their anti-black beliefs. Of course they're going to champion you. And of course black people are going to come at you with vitriol because you're a traitor. Like they see you as a traitor because it's like, how dare you be out here protesting against what we're protesting for. Now, honestly, to be quite honest, protesting don't do nothing. Honestly, if we really want to go there, protesting haven't really done nothing. So it's like the fact that they would be out there and upset at you for anti-protesting. It's like, why are y'all out there protesting in the first place like it's going to solve something? Like protesting never solved anything. Like even the protests of the civil rights era, it wasn't the protesting. It was the fact that you had people like the Deacons of Defense out here going on some Wild Wild West, like, shootout type joint, like fighting back against these white supremacists. You had people literally fighting back against these people, and that slavery being over. It wasn't just because, we had a change of heart and we went to war with the Confederates. It's like, no, bro. Like we was like rioting, we was doing slave rebellions all the time. Like literally all the time. We was always rebelling, we was always fighting back, we was always getting it in. We was always putting in that work to get our freedom. We was always doing that. And that is what contributed to us being free. Not us singing "We Shall Overcome" and whatnot. Same thing with the civil rights. It wasn't that we shall overcome. No, we was out there coming over and bussing and putting caps on people and putting knuckles to faces, trying to putting boots to butts out here, putting in that work. That is what got things going. It wasn't the protests. Protests don't solve anything. It's the work that you put in outside of that. Protesting is just a way for you to feel good. And it's funny, even though it doesn't really fit for this, I think it does. There's a channel called Healthy Gamer GG, and I watched some of his stuff, and he made a very good point on one of his videos. He was talking about how he says that science says that you talking, the energy you use to talk about doing something is the same energy that you do it with. So that's why there's always talkers and there's doers. There are people who talk, and then there are people who do. And a protest is literally nothing but just you talking instead of doing something. So it's like, the way I see it, a protest, that's just you blowing off steam. And if you're just trying to blow off steam, that's cool for you, but don't blow off some steam and expect us to thank you for doing something for us when you didn't really do anything for us, because you didn't.
Ironically.
I grew up in a Democratic, not a Democratic household, but kind of apolitical, but everybody was Democrat. And then I got a job. And when I got a job and I saw all the taxes come out and I started looking to the left and to the right and going, oh, my money's whittling away over here. And I said, you know what? After Reagan, I'm just going to go ahead and declare myself a Republican. And I've been a Republican ever since.
My mom is pretty liberal. She married my stepdad when I was 15, 16 in high school, and he's super conservative, loved Trump, diehard Trump fan. And they had a lot of back and forth, hearing the two sides, people who are on such polar opposites just argue all the time about stuff, seeing that there's a lot of similarities in both sides, the far radical left and the far radical right. They have a lot of similarities. They just don't want to come and see it.
I started off.
What I tell you, they'll still come together and make a family. So it doesn't matter whether it's a Democrat or a Republican. There's still two sides of the same. There's still two sides of the same coin, bro. It's no different.
Actually, kind of similar to you. I went to a Jesuit high school. I grew up very conservative. My mom is Cuban, so ride or die Bush supporter, who is
really?
Ride or die Trump supporter. I think the point of my life when I was the most libertarian was probably the lowest point of my life financially. And I think it's because something that conservatives do really well is they make you feel like you can always succeed as long as you work hard enough. And that's something that progressives and liberals suck at, that you're a victim of systemic racism, you're black, so you're going to be discriminated against, you're a woman, so nobody's going to care about your feelings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas Republicans will tell you, listen, if you work hard, you can do whatever you want, just as long as you're willing to put in the work. And I felt that way up to the moment where I was losing my house, where I had an ex-girlfriend that was pregnant, where I had been fired from my previous job. There was a whole bunch of horrible stuff going on in my life, and I very, very luckily got into online content creation. And from there, as I started to make more money, I started to pay more taxes. When I get older and I look at taxes that come out of my paycheck, I care a little bit, but it was just so funny to me that back when I was making $15,000, $20,000 a year, I'm I gotta vote for the lower tax bracket, blah, blah, blah. I'm barely paying any taxes anyways. And now that I'm older, if the government wants to take, a few, 10, 20, whatever, how many more $1,000 out.
You just said you worked hard. So
I did, but I got very, very, very lucky doing so.
Yep. They like to say, oh, you just gotta work hard and whatnot. How many CEOs really work hard to get to their position? How many people in higher up positions really actually work? I believe my mom was talking once about how somebody was over her. She was very young and she knew nothing about the business and she had to teach her. Did hard work put her in that upper position over my mother? No, it was the color of her skin and who she was related to or knew or something like that. And yes, she was white. So it's bro, you talking about hard work. White people don't always work hard. The thing is just that they've given the bigger benefit of the doubt. We have to work hard, but we don't get as far. We don't get nearly as far as white people do. So it's you got to miss out with that. And he was right about how making only $15,000, $20,000 a year, talking about some voting for a lower tax bracket for the rich people who don't even care about you. It's just like you're just using poor whites against everybody else to make them feel like they're better than everybody else, so they support their policies. But it's like they don't even care about poor whites, but yet they're gonna keep being on it because they just want to feel better than everybody else, especially black people.
Very lucky.
You think it's just luck?
It's not just luck, but the difference is that born into a wealthier family, you can make so many more mistakes in life.
Yep.
And when you're born poor, you get like one or two before your life is
Yep.
over. And that's really sad to me.
Yeah, so I used to be a liberal. I voted for Bernie Sanders in 2016, as much as I regret that now. My family was pretty left-wing. Some of the
Yeah, I don't really care about Bernie Sanders. That dude talking about black people don't deserve reparations. Like, yo, people didn't get reparations. It's like, boy, go on somewhere.
people in my family were like radically left, like would refer to white people as blue-eyed, red-headed devils, things of that nature. And as I got older, I actually started being really outspoken for BLM. I was supposed to be on a reality show teaching people how to be a BLM activist. At the time, I did a deep dive on BLM and I started to realize all of these lies. So then I took a step back. I'm like, okay, what else am I being lied to about? And I started looking at the Democratic Party and questioning my own loyalty to being on the left.
I personally think both sides tend.
But I'm like, that's the trick bag. That's the sneaky part about being a black conservative. It's like they find out that the Democrats were just always a racist front group. And it's like now, oh, well, let me go over to conservatism. And it's like, bro, that's no better. They really think that going over to conservatism is going to save them. And it's like, it's not going to save you, bro. It's not going to save you. It's just going to put you in another position. Do another deep dive into the Republicans and conservatism, at least modern Republicanism and conservatism. All those Dixiecrats moved right over to the Republican Party, bro. So it's like, no matter which party you go to, you're screwed. But it's like they think that they have to be on one of the parties. You don't have to be on any of them. You don't. But they feel like they have to be on one side or something. And that's the trick bag right there. And then they'll start saying all types of goofy stuff like, if you work hard, you'll get far in America, which is not true at all.
To be racist in different ways. I don't think the government is on the side of the people in general, and that's just me being, a radical.
When I was young, I used to jump for joy and say, oh yeah, Obama, black president, that's so amazing. He's the same color as me. But when I started to do more research, one of the biggest things I was confused about is, well, why is he a Democrat? What is a Democrat? I did more research about the Democrat Party. And sure, you guys are going to pop off about the head saying, oh, there's a party switch in the Southern strategy and all these things.
Which is true.
Which you may say is true. I don't believe it is true at all.
You're
I
wrong.
Understand, you may think I'm wrong.
You are.
However, one of the biggest questions I had was, why is Obama in the same party as
Yeah, he's definitely that white dude who says, let the minorities talk. Yeah, nah, because he... It's like, bro, man, you can't win with a liberal or a conservative, bro.
the people that started the KKK, the same people that voted against the Civil Rights Act, the same people that are on the news talking about how black people aren't able to accomplish anything and need to be on welfare and need to be promoted with affirmative action and things of that nature.
I also
Isn't that what
in
conservatives
terms of, I guess,
say?
of my political journey, I was raised conservative actually, and then high school became, I guess, sort of apolitical, and then throughout college and I guess just throughout my life since then, I think I guess you can call me a progressive, you can call me, socialist, whatever you, but I guess that's, in the area of where I fall. You said that you were a Bernie fan in 2016, and then you transitioned to being, I guess, more conservative. I guess, I don't know, to me, Bernie Sanders, from what he said to what you think now, what was the shift?
For me, it was socialism, because back then I was a very broke college kid and I just had this mentality that everything should be free, and I was feeling a bit entitled, like everything should be handed to me because I was black, because I was very much in that mentality as I...
Not handed. It is owed. Reparations is owed. Reparations is a debt. Now, I'm not saying that he was saying that, oh, I deserve a handout because, reparations. Well, I mean, yeah, that is what I'm saying, but I'm not saying that like just him being able to go to college and stuff and struggle is reparations. That's not reparations. But reparations would help it to the point where it's like you don't even need to go to a PWI. Because just like white people can just plug their folks in anywhere, we would be able to plug our folks in anywhere and get stuff done still. Because like Hispanics do it, Asians do it, Everybody, like even black immigrants and their descendants do it. Black Americans are pretty much the only people who don't have the power to do that in any way. We do, but compared to everybody else, it's so minuscule.
Learned more about free markets, as I learned more about capitalism, I started to appreciate that much more. I started to appreciate small business much more, limited government, low regulations. I just started to like that much more. But I would say just more when it comes to economics, I don't agree with him.
Reparations are necessary.
You gosh darn Skippy. Oh, Destiny don't agree. Wow, I am not surprised.
When we talk about reparations, I think that doing reparations in the way that a lot of people think of it, where we just give it to black people, I'm not an expert on this, but I think it would be more income-based, and that in itself, like I said earlier,
Rising tide lift all boats.
would.
And they still disagree. That's funny to me because they're the main ones talking about some freaking rising tide lifting all boats. And if you're really talking about a rising tide lifting all boats, why are you not over there agreeing with them? Because this dude went immediately into like, oh, I don't believe it should be based on race. Then it shouldn't exist. It has to be based on race and lineage.
Disproportionately benefit black people, because if you recognize that they are disproportionately affected by a systemic injustice, then doing it on like a class level would uplift proportionally more black people than white people or any other race.
Yeah, I think like
it would proportionally lift up more illegal immigrants than it would for us.
Mostly like black GIs that were left out of like the New Deal, for instance, that to be able to come back and as a white American, as a white veteran, to get a home loan and then build that generational wealth, you could not get that as a black American. So there needs to be, I think, reparations. I don't care really what form it comes from. I think free healthcare, free college, so that everyone has like an equal opportunity to educate themselves, to build a better life for themselves. So it's sort of like, and I think Germany is also a perfect model to follow. By issuing, first of all, a formal apology, which we haven't even done that, but also just like donating to like different funds, and just I think a more equitable society striving for that is reparations in and of itself.
I have no.
Now, I'm like this. The way I see reparations is the way that like people like Jason Black have put it, where it's like you get a check, we get government policies, guaranteed government contracts, control over narrative, image, and media, and stuff like that. And then like Professor Black Truth with having our own Black intelligence agency. That is like real reparations. Anything else other than that, to be quite honest, is just a rising tide lifting all boats and don't do nothing for nobody. If it doesn't come with these specific things attached to it, these additional parameters, it's gonna fall. But it's like, I'm pretty sure, like he said, he don't really care how it's done. He just don't want it to be done the way we want it to be done, probably.
No problems with reparations if they had happened initially during this, like slavery or.
Okay, there we go. The statute of limitations. Now, for one of these episodes, I want to get my father in here so that he can talk about his slavery era, about how he grew up in slavery. Because they like to say, oh, well, slavery ended during this time. No, it didn't. My father grew up as a slave would in a slave cabin picking cotton, where they still had a white boss or master in this sense, who would still kill you for doing anything out of line and wouldn't have to face any recompense for doing so. Almost like today. But it's like, there was the way he grew up, you would not be able to tell the difference between the way he grew up and how a slave grew up in the early 1800s. And one day I'm going to get him on here so that he can tell you guys about it. But that's that BS statute of limitations. No, because the reparations aren't just for slavery. They're for, like I said before, slavery, Jim Crow, segregation, redlining, Tulsa, the Tuskegee experiments, school to prison pipeline, police brutality. Reparations is for all of this. It's not just for one thing.
Civil rights movement or any of that. But to try and do that now logistically, it just doesn't really make any sense. And like, where would this money come from? Like, we're in so much debt as a nation.
They got that money out of nowhere for the Ukrainians. They can get it out of nowhere for us too.
Would I get this money? I'm biracial or triracial. Like, do mixed people get it? And like,
I knew it. I knew she wasn't fully black, and that makes a lot more sense now. And here comes the whole other trick bag. Like, oh, well, who gets it? If you can trace your lineage back to slavery, like Tariq be saying, you can get it. But if you can't trace your lineage back to slavery, you don't get it. That simple. And you have to identify as black, not biracial, not some other stuff, not white or Hispanic or whatever. You have to also been labeled as black for the past 10 years.
do Irish people get reparations
Absolutely
when they were
not.
indentured servants?
I think for reparations, if you can find specific instances of somebody being like actually deprived of something, whether specific instances of like the 40 acres and a meal promise, or whether you can find specific cases of like Chinese people building railroads or Irish people or whatever, people being deprived of things, that's okay. But otherwise, yeah, it's a logistical nightmare. There's no possible way that we'd be able to do it well.
Yeah, America's unique because we have bent over backwards for decades now, putting minorities in a position of privilege. I feel like we have done so much to give back to the communities that were obviously wronged. And I agree with both of you. Like, had this happened a long time ago, I would understand it. If we had specific incidences that we could trace where
So you're saying that it's okay to filibuster it until you don't have to do it anymore? That also in and of itself should also be seen as a reason to increase the payment of reparation, for them purposefully waiting it out so that it never gets done. They never wanted to do it in the first place. They gave reparations to slave owners, and they didn't give a single thing to the people who were formerly enslaved. So it doesn't matter if it's a logistical nightmare. We can take that on. We can get our own people to handle reparations for Black Americans. We could get our own team on that. We can get our own people on that. And we'll take that logistical nightmare off your shoulders. Thurgood Marshall was doing that before they got him up out of the paint. Was it Thurgood? I think it was Thurgood. Yeah. Was it Thurgood or I forgot. No, maybe was it? I gotta look that up. But like, yeah, there was like a Black attorney who was trying to figure that out before they got him up. Johnny Cochran, I think. Yeah, I think Johnny Cochran. Yeah, they got him up out of the paint while he was trying to add up the numbers and whatnot. So it's just like, people want to talk about, slavery happened so long ago. It's like, not to my father. Not to my father. He can tell you what it's like growing up on a plantation with a slave owner. But yeah, statute of limitations, that's just another BS point. They filibustered it this long so that they wouldn't have to do it. But that in and of itself should also be seen as a crime and increase on payment.
People were just completely screwed over, I would respect it. But right now, I don't deserve a payment for something my great-great-great-great-grandparents went through. And I don't think that white people are responsible for paying that to me either.
I know
it's not white people, it's the country.
We don't want to use the
and the states.
Word virtue signaling, but it's sort of like a bribe for a vote in a way, at least in my opinion.
A bribe for a vote? Isn't that everything that a politician promises? Isn't that everything that they promise?
States like California, where they've been throwing around the idea of, we want to pay out this much money to every Black citizen in there, in this state. It's like, are you serious? Because this is kind of like a joke, in my opinion.
I think that if we impose reparations now, I think it would rip America apart. I think.
Who cares? Who cares? Who cares if it rips America apart? That's what America needs at this point if you really want to go there. It's like, it'll rip America apart. America is already ripping itself apart. the economy is constantly going to garbage. They took the dollar off of gold and put it onto oil. And then Joe Biden ended up pushing Saudi Arabia away towards BRICS so that even the oil that our money is based on is going to soon go away as well. This country is already on its last legs and it just started. And you want to sit here and talk about it'll tear this country apart. This country is already tearing itself apart. It's already imploding. People are already wanting to leave this country. Like I've been seeing more and more shorts and TikToks about immigrants talking about how America is not what they said it was. It's not as good as it is. They thought they was going to come here, work a little bit and take the money back. And it's like, no, they come here, work and get stuck. This country is already going to crap. And as a matter of fact, here's a theory of mine. America will never get better until it pays the debt that it owes of reparations. Why? Because America they judge what they do as far as doing wrong against people by how much they're willing to do against black people. Now follow me. America was always pushing past reparations. They were pushing it back because they never want to do it. They don't want to do it, and they probably never will. But they don't want to do it. That's the key thing, and they will keep pushing it back as long as they possibly can until they have to deal with it at the last minute. When you look at how the debt bubble of this country is constantly inflating, it's going to be worse than if they would have just popped it a long time ago and let the country repair itself naturally. But since they didn't want to do that, they've been keeping the credit bubble going up and up and up, constantly inflating to the point where it's going to burst. But when it bursts, they're going to be like, oh, well, I'm already good. I already got all my stuff. I'm already out. But it's like for everybody else, we're all going to be stuck and screwed. But if America paid the reparations, they would be doing things that they don't want to do, which is they don't want to fix this whole debt bubble that they got going on right now. They don't want to fix it. They keep pumping money into the economy like it's going to fix something, and it never does. And they're going to keep doing stuff that doesn't work to prolong the inevitable, because the debt of slavery and of Jim Crow segregation, school to prison pipeline, redlining, Tuskegee experiments, all this other stuff, they don't want to do it, and they keep pushing it back as far as they can, which is an inevitable debt. And because they keep pushing that inevitable debt of what we are owed, they're going to keep doing that to the country until this country is done. So you're talking about it'll break the country. The country is already broken.
That we're already separated enough as it is, and now you're going to have people walking around going, you owe me money, you owe me money, I'm not paying you any money. It would just really rip us apart.
Giving somebody money doesn't mean anything if they don't know what to do with the money or how to handle the money. So
there's another goofy talking point about like, oh, if you give them money, they don't know what to do. That's why you need guaranteed government contracts, where they have to build the infrastructure and the businesses that are necessary for black people to be in charge of. So they would have to teach black people about filtering water or building construction or doing these things. And they have to help us build the businesses up so that we can have the business to compete with everybody else for like government contracts or private contracts or whatever, so that we can have our bid as well. But we always get to have a decent enough bid for a Black American so that there's always wealth cycling through our community. So it's not just about giving us money and then taking our hands off. It's giving us money, giving us policy, and giving us other guaranteed things so that we never have to worry about that. But they don't want to see it as that. They just want to see it as money so they can dismiss it.
if the primary issue in Black culture or with Black people is generational trauma, then maybe they need more therapy than they need money, honestly.
Which
we need both. Little girl, we need both. And we need more.
Conservatives are also against.
Well, that's kind of my argument. Like, if there is like that, like generational trauma or whatever, like I think examples of like free healthcare, they could see a therapist and not be, fall into debt. And I think the argument of like the logistical nightmares of it, I think if we want to pay
What type of therapy can you give to people who were formerly enslaved and subject to some of the most cruelest treatments of human history?
For something in this country, we usually find a way to do it, especially when it comes to the military. So, I mean, we pay for multi-billion-dollar
It's
jets
not
all
the
the
dollars,
time.
it's who's supposed to get them.
Not to attack progressives, but that is like the most progressive idea in the world. Is like I can see the headlines like reparations voted on in Congress to be paid in the form of free therapy for people in the hood. That just sounds like the funniest thing in the world. But
well, I also don't think it's going to come directly from like, you know, white person to black person. Like, oh, your lineage affected his lineage.
It is though. Like in San Francisco, they were going to raise the average family, or the average household in San Francisco was expected to pay $600,000 each with the $5 million per black person proposal that they had. And I used to live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I was repulsed by that because you have so many homeless veterans on the streets, and they were going to give black people a home for as little as $1 just for being black. Mind you, slavery wasn't even in California. So
they were brought to California though. They still brought slaves through to California.
Why that was going to be the case, like, I don't understand, but it's extremely unrealistic to think that the average family in San Francisco can afford that.
That's because Newsom wants to get reelected.
Okay, but you don't really care about homeless veterans, right?
That's just
you
a
don't support
idea.
You don't know
I
me.
feel like all your arguments are ad hominem.
Yeah, that's. I mean, the thing is, he probably really don't care about homeless veterans, to be quite honest. But this dude also doesn't care about homeless veterans either. Homeless veterans were just thrown up as a talking point. None of these people care about them, honestly, in my opinion. In my humble opinion, I believe none of these people really care. But it's like, why would you give stuff to black people when you have homeless veterans? What? So? Like, how many homeless black people are there on Skid Row? Exactly.
But you're
literally every single one ad
You're here as a
hominem.
conservative. So what policies do you support for homeless veterans?
There's ways to address, I mean,
specifically
for homeless in general.
That's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say that we didn't find a middle ground in there.
Yeah.
All right.
But that's a great ending note.
White liberals have a savior complex.
Yes. Yes, they do. How much longer is? Oh my God. I still got 9 more minutes. Oh my Lord. Oh man, I'm so sorry. This is 1 hour and 39 minutes already. And this is my first episode. Wow. But yes, they have that boy right there, Alec. Yeah. Severe savior complex. Severe savior complex. Destiny a little bit. And Edward Scissorhands on the right hand side. Yeah, him too. Everybody came out.
Well,
not
I gotta
her.
say, this is a shock. I never expected all 4 of you to just come forward and admit it, but you know what? I'm happy with these results.
I just think it's a lot of people, I guess, people, you know, of the left, whatever, can kind of fall into that trap of thinking that, you know, black people as a monolith need to be saved as a whole.
I have no shame about it. I have a savior complex as an older brother, and I will save you whether you like it or not. So that's just me.
No, it's silent for a reason. And then the smug smile at the end of that. And look at Destiny's face. He's just like, oh my God. This is hilarious. The fact that he just said that like that, and it's just like, and he's like, I'm going to save you whether you like it or not. And it's just like, bro, that sounds like R wording, bro. It's like, whether you want it or not, here it comes. Like, bro.
Well, it's definitely not, because a lot of us are really just exhausted of being viewed as our skin color. Because when you have this mindset that you need to save black people and we're just sitting here minding our own business and living our lives the way we want to, I don't know why it is that people feel this immense pressure to be so apologetic and just always trying to cater and coddle to black people when we just want to be treated like everybody else. We're equal for a reason.
I think especially recently with a lot of riot stuff that's gone on or protest stuff that's gone on, people on the left tend to infantilize a lot of different types of protesters, and especially even talking to, you know, some of the other black content creators I do content with, when you hear a lot of progressives come out and say, well, they don't have a choice but to riot or break into this store, or, well, they're stealing, you know, these electronics or shoes for good reasons, you just don't realize it. I think a lot of people kind of look both ways, and it's a little bit weird that there's such a complex on the left to excuse like every single possible negative behavior from somebody as long as they're a skin color that you're kind of in charge of protecting.
I find that very offensive.
Yeah.
I find
It's
it
really
extremely, it upsets me to hear that, because we're just like you. We just have a different skin color. And to hear that you have to help me is offensive to me. I can do it on my own.
Well, we have to break down sometimes why these riots happen. You know, MLK once said that riots are the voice of the unheard. So if you are to address the problem and stop the riots, you have to address the underlying inequality that has historically been pervasive. You know, even if you as individual people are doing fine and you don't want anybody else to get in the way of that, that's cool, and I'm not going to be the one to get in the way.
You just said you were.
But the disparities are undeniable.
So if you take pride in having like a white savior complex, what is it that you think that you're doing to save black people, and what is it that you think that you're saving black people from?
I am trying to make the world a better place through whatever means I can. And
but you're doing it on the backs of us.
I would say so.
Yeah,
I mean, the backs of minorities, but yeah.
I feel like you want to be a savior and you're using me to make yourself feel good. That's what
How
I'm
am I hurting you?
You're not letting me have my own voice. You're not letting me speak.
How? You're speaking now?
No,
You're cutting her off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm about to say,
I
bro.
feel like I have to.
Yeah. Well, what's
But that's you doing what you want, bruh. This dude is literally proving the point of how self-righteous white liberals are. Like, bro, Jesus Christ.
You're speaking right now in this particular setting. But what you're saying is, like, you took it back to riots and so forth, and it makes it seem like the only way that we as black people can have a voice is by riots, and then you need to come along and you need to say, okay, poor little black child, let me help you. That's offensive to me.
Where is she from? Her black accent didn't even it didn't really match up. Where is she from? She don't sound like she sound funny.
And I feel like you're making yourself feel good about trying to help us.
That's exactly what he's
I
doing.
also think that, like, when we talk about damage, I think especially when it comes to a lot of the shoplifting stuff that's going on in certain cities, you get a lot of white people that live in nice suburbs saying things like shoplifting is no big deal, that's fine, and then you'll catch YouTube videos of them later on being in a Walgreens in like a shoddy neighborhood, and they're like, man, why is the deodorant behind a locked case? It's very easy to sit behind a gated community and say, oh, well, you know, it's not a big deal, you know, they steal because they have to. Riots are the language of the unheard. I think people haven't read the full context of that quote. When MLK was saying riots were the language of the unheard and you need to address the underlying condition, he wasn't condoning the rioting, he was just understanding it.
Obviously there are a bunch of white people that feel they need to be a savior, but I think there's a difference between helping and saving. Like, I don't think I would need to save black people, but I would tremendously love to help and make sure everyone has like equal outcome, or not equal outcome, but at least equal opportunity, which in my opinion, I feel we do not have in this country.
I'm surprised she didn't come up.
Hi guys. So I didn't step forward just because I don't want to broad brush all white liberals as having a white savior complex. I have experienced white liberals who do have that, and
there's like a couple right there.
People. But I don't think every single white person who's a liberal
the camera pan to him
is an activist for BLM or any of those things necessarily has a white
the
savior
camera
complex.
pan on him was hilarious.
There's a lot of white people who genuinely think that black people are oppressed and they want to help, and that's what they're told.
What it seems like to me, when most people have savior complex, regardless of whom they're trying to save, it's like they're taking real pain and real trauma and using that as a way to push this political agenda, but also to alleviate themselves of whatever guilt that they feel unnecessarily. Like, I don't know why a white person today would feel guilty for things.
All right, now he's about to say that white people shouldn't feel guilty for, like, you know, slavery but what he was saying is that, like, them, and this is something I got from I believe Zoe Williams. He was saying how, like, it's like white people try to fight karma. And this is why I believe that, like, unless they pay reparations, this country is going to go to garbage. And it's because white people like to fight karma. And what they do is that they try to become let's save the whales. Oh, let's save the sea turtles. Let's save the environment. Let's save black people. Let's save these immigrants. Let's do all of this stuff just so that they can fight back all of the karma in which they're really owed. So it's like they're doing this just to like avoid paying a debt or avoiding to paying their karma. And it's like they're just going to keep trying to push it off until one day they won't be able to do it anymore. And that's what I believe is like why why they have this savior complex. It's not that they have a savior complex because they think that they're good. They have a savior complex because they're trying to ward off their karma.
Things that happened decades ago, let alone something that happened centuries ago.
I've never seen a white person say, I personally feel guilty for slavery. Maybe they're out there, but
I'm pretty sure
I've
it's
never
happened.
heard that.
Yeah, in second grade, when they taught us about slavery, almost every kid in my classroom would spend their entire time looking at black kids in that classroom. How was I supposed to not think, wow, these people are feeling guilty for something that they have no involvement in and I have no involvement in?
Every kid in my classroom understood the context.
People hate feeling uncomfortable, and obviously you don't want to feel like the bad guy, and so I feel like it comes from a place of like, oh, well, like, let me make sure that I'm different, and like, I'm showing you that I want to like help you, but it comes across like, I think it can land very poorly.
I'll tell you what, stop it. Stop it. Because what happens is when you put yourself as the white savior, what you do is you elevate yourself above the black person because you feel then like you have to save us. So just stop it. Just treat everybody regular and normal. Just like I would treat you regular and normal, you treat us regular and normal rather than trying to save us.
I just got one thing I wanted to bring up earlier about taxes, because you were saying that you had your job and you were talking about how like you get the tax every time and you're like seeing your tax go up. I worked in nursing homes in 2020 COVID. The last thing that was on my mind when I watched 60 and 70-year-olds on their deathbeds suffocating to death was taxes. I was worried about health care. I didn't give a shit about taxes in that time. So when I go to work every day, that's what I see. That's what I want to fix.
I see you once again.
Boy.
Elevating yourself above the rest of us, and particularly at me, a white man elevating himself above a black person.
He called me a bootlicker. He called me a bootlicker.
Oh no, I triggered them all. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I'm chilling, buddy.
So what I hope comes out of this conversation is that we're all Americans, and because we're all Americans, we know that America has a bunch of problems, and I think every person here wants to solve the problems, and I think everybody is bringing what they have to the table with their ideas on how to get us to unify. This kind of stuff, right? But you got something in there. Hopefully, I mean, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt that you have something in there that's redeeming about you that would bring all of Americans together. So I hope that we end on the note of American.
UNITY.
Boy, if you don't go on somewhere, I would literally say that old boy right here, the rapid mouth one on the left, dude, the one with the bigger afro and the side fade, he's like a Black Destiny in this regard with the fast talk. And Xavier is a reverse Alec. Like, he's a reverse Alec in this instance. I would say that.
I would like to say we're all made in the image of God, and so we all have our inerrant worth just because we're made in his image, and we should treat each other as fellow image bearers, not just by the color of our skin. I mean, as Martin Luther King said.
I mean, Martin Luther King also was for reparations, so if you're going to quote the man right.
He also did not like capitalism.
I think something that's really challenging.
And he also was for reparations. Nobody want to talk about that.
I've definitely been guilty in the past of throwing around the Uncle Tom word. I used to be hardcore progressive. I'm still relatively progressive. But something that I've learned as time has gone on is being a white person isolates you from a lot of the different types of racial struggles that people go through, and those struggles can take a lot of different forms. Not just, was my ancestor a slave, and not just is my culture bad, but sometimes in the way that, people grow and develop, right? Like, am I actually choosing these political beliefs because they mean something to me, or is it because I'm black or my parents are black? If I speak a certain way, am I betraying my race? If I am a political orientation, am I a bootlicker? And I think that it's important when you're coming from a progressive point of view to understand that even though there are conservatives that are black people, you have to treat them as individuals and not just come at it with this, like, you're black, you're a conservative, therefore here's like 6 or 7 different slurs that I can use against you, but they're approved because I happen to be on the progressive side.
This is
All right. After all of that, I can honestly tell you I am not surprised. All of the type of talking points that would just obviously be there and will obviously do nothing. They wouldn't move the bar. They wouldn't move the needle at all. It all was there. About black people being our own worst enemy, about trying to appeal to white people and white people trying to be our savior and being over us and stuff like that was all there. It was all there. And it did absolutely nothing. And that is not surprising because they don't want to do anything. They don't want to do anything that involves any real change, which in this case would be doing things like paying reparations. They don't want to move the needle. They don't want to change the racial, social, economic hierarchy. Like, they're talking about like a rising tide lift. All of their talking points was a rising tide lift all boats. And it's like the fact that they hinge so much of their logic on that illogical fallacy is just crazy to me. Honestly. It's like everybody hinges so much stuff on that talking point alone. And it's just like you can't get anywhere on that. Because if my boat is upside down, it does not matter. Both of these groups are really only in it for themselves. And honestly, although more black Americans are finding the Democratic trick bag, I hope they don't just go over to conservatism because they think that they have to choose one. When, in actuality, you don't have to choose any of them. You can literally just choose to be non-political. Just don't be political and only vote if you really want to vote. Only vote on things that are promised to you as a black American. If it's not promised to you as a black American, then you don't need to vote on it. Because Asians get things, Hispanics get things, white people get things, LGBTQIA plus gets things. Everybody gets things for themselves, but we as black Americans never get anything for ourselves. So it's like, only use your vote whenever you're going to get something from it. And if not, then you're just wasting your breath and wasting your time. All right. Well, thank y'all for, listening to this video. And if you made it this far, in the comment section, type, not surprised. I want you to, so if you made it this far into the video or the podcast or whatever, put in the comment sections, not surprised. All right. And also remember to subscribe and hit the bell notification whenever I post a video so you can be notified, and like the video. If you liked it, dislike it, I don't care. Just hopefully you'll join us again for the next installment when we go over some other videos. All right. Thank you. And later.